Welcome to the Studio Talk podcast. I'm Xiomara Sosa, your co-host. Every week, we speak to our community members to teach them about mental health through education and awareness, and our hope is to inspire them through social change advocacy. We also interview community members and other mental health professionals, clinicians, healers, students, and wellness professionals. Our style is storytelling. Everyone has a mental health story to tell. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional and is not a substitute for psychological diagnosis or treatment. It's purely educational and purely social change advocacy. If you find yourself in any sort of mental health emergency or distress, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room. Welcome everyone to the X Podcast, Real Conversations about Mental Health. This is episode number 34, and today's topic is amateur therapy speak on social media, radio, etc. So it really is amateur therapy speak. So I'm your host, clinical mental health counselor Xiomara Sosa. I'm a holistic and integrative women's mental health therapist, a private practice owner, a national board certified counselor, and a licensed professional counselor and clinical supervisor. I also run a nonprofit for mental health, a mental health co-op for mental health clinicians here in South Carolina. So as a mental health clinician, I strive to have real conversations about all things related to mental health here on the podcast. Right, guys?
That's right.
So we're here with J-Rock, and we want to introduce Kristen Johnson, who's another clinician in town here, and I'm going to let her introduce herself to you guys, but she's going to be a regular on and off with us, aren't you? Yeah. And then J-Rock can introduce himself.
All right.
Yes, so my name's Kristen Johnson. I am a trauma and EMDR therapist. I'm a licensed professional counselor, associate here in South Carolina, and I am a private practice owner.
Yes, she is. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And again, I'm J-Rock. So been radio personality here in Charleston for close to 20 years. Fan of audio, podcasting, all of that. So, I'm just here, just learning every podcast. I'm very, naive in this field, but I'm learning more and more every time I'm on with UCMR. So super excited to continue my learning journey in the world of mental health for sure. So
J-Rock is the one that comes with his little notes and his little his little references.
Right here. I got it. I got my notepad. I'm ready.
And one thing I do want to say about Kristen that she didn't say, I don't think, is that she's a former law enforcement officer. And that's really important for a lot of reasons, and we'll get into that later. One of the reasons I like to say what our different backgrounds are is because a lot of the things that we talk about relate to the populations that we deal with. And so we look at things through a certain lens, and in her private practice and in her population, she has a very specific lens that she looks at it through mental health counseling, which is very unique in our area. So I wanted to point that out. Okay, so Lisa can't make it tonight, and everybody else has stuff to do, so it is us. So what we're going to talk about is amateur therapy speak. So what the hell is that, right? Like, what is that? I'm just going to give the actual definition that was online, and then we can get into what we feel it is, right?
Okay.
So this really, from my personal opinion, I am talking about radio hosts. I am talking about radio personalities. No offense, J-Rock.
I know, sorry. It's cool.
I was going to ask.
I'm good.
Do you feel attacked over there?
No, I'm good.
No, there's some people around town that want to give, relationship, marriage.
I know all of them. I know all of them.
And they give, and when I hear it, I'm like, oh my, the terror that it causes behind the scenes that they don't even know that they're doing, kind of thing. And I kind of look at that the way I look at coaches who go out of their area of expertise without a disclaimer, not understanding certain things. But not just that, social media like Facebook, TikTok, of course, is now the thing. All of these areas, they are not your therapists, like I always say on the show. They are not your counselors. They are not your mental health clinicians. They are not relationship and marriage counselors. So taking any sort of like advice, whether it's joking or not joking or entertainment or not entertainment, we take it very seriously because people will believe that stuff to be the thing to do or the thing it is or whatever. And it's not, and it can be really detrimental to the people experiencing the issues that are being used for entertainment purposes. So that's just my little spiel on that. So therapy speak is when people use psychological, therapeutic, or mental health language in day-to-day conversations. Things like boundaries, abuse, gaslighting, narcissist. That's the big one, right, Lisa? Everybody's a narcissist now. I mean, I'm sorry.
She's already
I'm
calling
sorry, I'm
you
calling you Lisa.
I know, we miss
Because
Lisa.
I do that,
okay.
don't I? I call Lisa out all the time. I'm sorry. Kristen, that, right? Narcissist, that's the big one, right?
That's a very big one.
Yeah, that's a big one. Psychopath, trauma, they're being thrown around. There are good things about that for us, right? That people are having these conversations, that these things, words are they're familiar, they're being normalized in the language. But there's also a bad side to that we'll get into too. So that's pretty much what it is. It's lingo for everyone, especially online, referring to mental health related terms. What do you guys have to say about any of that?
Yeah, I hear that so much. Just like you were saying, like with especially say coaches, online coaches, or people just giving their opinions and stuff. So all those terms I've heard at least like 1,000 times. So it's
like it's become normal language and is being used. The way that depression, Kristen, remember when depression and anxiety and that kind of stuff, we knew the clinical sense in which we meant it. But now all of a sudden somebody has a bad day and they have anxiety, they have depression, and oh my God, and they have trauma and all that.
Right.
What is
that? So I will say narcissist, gaslighting, and trauma are some of the biggest ones. And because I'm a trauma therapist,
oh my God,
I get triggered, dare I say. See what I did there?
I did.
See what I did there? I know. I'm right off the bat, guys. You didn't even know what you were in for.
I know.
But those are things where people are saying, oh, I'm traumatized from that. And I'm like, ooh, tell me more. Because I'm like, this is juicy. And then they elaborate. And I'm like, never mind.
Yeah, that's not it.
No.
So so we'll get into why we find that problematic. It's not because we don't want you to use the words and we're being petty and that's our language or anything like that. It's because it's taking away the meaning of what it really is. It's also misinforming people, I feel. It's creating problems that shouldn't exist when you start using certain terms, because you start relating to people differently when you're thinking that they are traumatized, whatever. And so we'll get into that. And that's sort of like where we're going to start the conversation at. Another thing that I see happening a lot is people weaponizing therapy speak, right? Misusing the terminology in ways that just gets my goat. And I'll give you an example. Like, for example, someone thinks that someone's not responding or respecting their boundary. Boundary is a clinical term we use for a lot of reasons that have nothing to do with, I just don't want to deal with you, or I just don't have the energy for you right now. Like, boundaries, the way that we use it, are not about that. But you'll see people using that word almost to justify being unkind, unavailable, not making space for you in my life. My bath time is more important than you. This is my boundary. Don't overstep it. Like, that is not what the term boundary, because as human beings, right, Kristen, we are supposed to have reciprocity. I can't say that word. But it's supposed to be a relationship that gives and takes. So if I'm giving, and then you decided that you don't want to give as much, but you're using and you're weaponizing the term boundaries to kind of like dismiss me feeling hurt or unimportant to you because it's your boundary, so I can't be breaking it back, then you're misusing that term. You're misusing that term. The other one was that whole reactive abuse one that we talked about that one time. In abusive relationships, this is a real thing, right? This is a real thing where people who are in domestic violence and who are in controlling relationships, just situations that are out of the norm and really detrimental to somebody's well-being, right? And they're getting pushed and pushed and pushed, like the one I talked about that one day. And then the other person, the victim, the person who's feeling overwhelmed because of that one person's behavior, reacts all of a sudden. And I'm sure police officers see this a lot. The other person reacts and like in my case, calls you a pussy or whatever, and then that's the little part that they focus on that you did. And that's the reactive abuse, right? But it's within the context of all of this other major traumatizing stuff that's happening to you.
Right.
But then they'll use that reactive abuse in a way to make you not be able to say anything anymore about why you even did that. You know what I'm saying? That's what I mean by weaponizing.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I see that so much on like social media posts, like where people like would make captions, and I would see that on a post, and it's like, okay, well, I need my boundaries, my space, and for someone, like I said, like clearly I don't know the terms that well. I just see it that's more in the space that we're living in now. It's like, so like you were saying, I see a lot of that on just like little posts, little captions. So someone might take a photo and then they'll post that, I need my boundaries, my space.
Self-care.
Yeah, that's it. So
Did you see Kristen's face when I said self-care?
no, that's the other big one. So
Self-care.
yeah. So
That is a big one.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the thing about therapy speak is that one of the things that it's the good thing that comes from it is it's supposed to be about being open to reflection, right? So if you're using boundaries and self-care and all that, it's supposed to be about being open to reflection. How is this affecting me? How is this affecting the people around me? How am I using this word in terms of and within the context of which I learned it in with my appropriate mental health provider, not on the streets where somebody's talking it and now I'm using it in context that is inappropriate. That's what I see happening a lot, right? So review and education, you use these words to sort of review what's going on, to educate yourself, to see if it's even like, it's a thoughtful process. There's an intent to it. It's I think that for me is the most important thing, that the intent is used correctly. I don't see it being used that way a lot online. Do you see that? Yeah.
No, it's usually misused, and I think that I'm okay with people using that terminology. Like you said earlier, I want that. I want people to use these words in the correct way so that people can be more knowledgeable on these terms. But I just want people to be mindful of that when they are saying the things that they're saying.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you're not a therapist. So be careful who you're using. And I think that's my issue with it, is when they're using it and they're coming from a place of, I am this educated, well-informed person on these issues that mental health clinicians use, and therefore I can use this in my conversation with you because I am over here with my knowledge and I can manipulate this conversation the way that I need it to go for me in this argument that I'm trying to win, or this temper tantrum I'm trying to have, or whatever. And I'm using all of these terms that normally a mental health person wouldn't use for those reasons. We would use them within the context of what the current counseling session is about, right? Right? So if we're saying boundaries, we're not going to be saying, when you're taking a shower, make sure that everyone knows what your boundaries are, that they cannot knock on the door. And that's not what we mean by that. We mean, if you are in the middle of a major depressive episode, you're incredibly depressed, you can barely get yourself out of bed, you're trying to do the best that you can, and then you have a family member coming along, dumping all their trauma on you because they don't want to go to the therapy or whatever, and now you have to take all of that in when you're not in a place that it's going to be healthy for you, that it's going to be helpful for you. And so your boundaries, we're going to talk to you about. That's when you start thinking about, what is your boundary when you're in the middle of an episode and you can barely take a shower and you only have enough energy to do that.
Okay.
Are you going to give this person a whole hour of all of this stuff for you that's only going to take away from you being able to make it through the next 30 minutes?
Okay.
Boundaries, right?
Yeah.
But not, I don't agree with you, and I'm telling you I don't like this, and these are my boundaries, and you're going to have to just deal with that.
Yeah.
That's different, and that's what I see on them.
No, yeah. No, like, for sure. That definition, the clinical one is, I'm like, oh, yeah. Because, like, that makes more sense than... Yeah, no.
That makes a lot of sense. Or
For
if you're
sure.
dealing, if there's a woman who's in a domestic violence situation, or, not even violence, just domestic abuse, controlling, financial abuse, whatever, and they're discussing things, and you're trying to get your person to understand why this is a violation. Like, why would this person need to track you when you're going to the store to go buy, your personal items, or whatever? Why do they need to know? And like, whatever that GPS thing is that they do on the phone now on your camera, that is a real boundary that is being broken, right? And that is detrimental to this person who's dealing with a volatile situation at home. So we teach them how to use their boundaries so that they can be safe, so that they can have their wellness intact, so that they can know how to take care of themselves. Not so that they can have the right to go party around the corner and you tell them that that's my boundary, don't bother me about it.
Right. Yeah.
Big difference. Anyway.
I like the example that you gave with experiencing a depressive episode and then family members trying to dump on you, because I actually had something with a client last week.
Really?
She has been experiencing so much anxiety. She's having panic attacks. And one of the things that I was actually so proud of her, one of the things that she mentioned in session was, I was able to identify that my mom dumping her relationship problems on me just increases my anxiety. It makes it so much worse. My mom already has a lot of anxiety, and she's trying to take her relationship problems and dump them on me, and that is extremely overwhelming. And so she did set that boundary. That's why I said I'm so proud of her, because she told me in session, she said, I had to let my mom know, hey, as much as I want to be here for you, right now, I cannot take that on for you. I'm dealing, and her mom knew. She said, I'm dealing with all of, these panic attacks. I'm not even able to work right now. Yeah. And so I need you to either find another outlet or, carry that burden yourself. And then, when I'm good. And I was like, thank you for setting that boundary.
That's so nice. See, now that's the appropriate word. That's the appropriate way in which a person should use that. And then one of the things that I see happen, and tell me if you see this happen, it's like we don't want clients and people not to use these terms. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying be very mindful about how you're using them. And really, quite frankly, why are you using them? Why are you using all this therapy speak with your sister, your brother, your cousin, your friend, your store person, your coworker? I'm not sure I understand that. Why? Because I don't use those terms. When I'm hanging out at home, I'm not talking to my people going, hey man, my boundaries being, and right now, like I don't use all of these terms. Like I speak I use regular vocabulary because I'm not in a session and I'm not, and when they bring it up, because they all use these words too, I don't tend to get into conversations and use those words. I'll like redirect and start using the regular real word. Oh, you mean you're upset? Well, I was traumatized by the traffic. You're really angry about the traffic, huh? Like, you're not traumatized by the traffic. What you are is angry and irritated and pissed off and whatever, but you're not traumatized. And one of the reasons that's a real important thing is because a person that's truly traumatized for real, it feels some kind of way when people take that term and use it for their everyday stuff, real heavy stuff, but not trauma, right? And here you are having a trauma, a real diagnosable trauma. And you don't even want to use that word, right? You don't even want to go out in public and say, I was a victim of rape and I have trauma related to that rape and therefore I have whatever going on. You don't want to use that word. So to hear other people take that word and trivialize it and sort of just minimize what it means and all that, it is a disservice to the people who are actually needing that terminology just to survive, just to get through what they're going through. So I kind of take a little issue with that. Like,
yeah.
Now, therapy speak, like we said, it's kind of a lingo and it's all related to mental health, but there is a healthy therapy speak, and like I mentioned before, the reflection, the education, using it in a thoughtful way, maybe showing someone a way to think about what's going on with them. So like if you're suddenly feeling, J-Rock, that you're having issues related to getting up out of bed, your energy's real low, this is not you, it's, whatever thing is going on with you, and you come and you mention it to us or someone else that's not a clinician, and they're like, maybe that's something you might want to think about, that might be a little bit of depression. I don't know. I really don't know. That just might be something that you might want to go talk to somebody about. I don't know enough about it, but that sounds like something I've heard. Instead of talking to you like they know, and this is depression because my cousin had it, and that's what it's, that's not how you diagnose depression, but we don't want you to not use those terms. We just don't want it to be used against people because they're having a low mood for 3 days.
Yeah. Okay.
You don't want somebody thinking they have depression if they don't have depression.
Right.
I don't. Or trauma if they don't have trauma, know?
Right.
Okay. So what else do we have to say about this? Let's talk about self-care.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't know if you remember the one that we did, Victoria and I did. Victoria's we'll talk about Victoria later. She and I did one of the first podcasts on self-care. I was so kind of like upset about that whole thing that was happening online with self-care.
Yeah.
So this is a big one, right? And this is a big one, especially since the epidemic. Everybody went online. Everybody became a wellness expert. Everybody became a coach. Everybody became a something that and it was all about self-care, and it was all about healing, and all about anything and everything else. So I get why that happened, and that's cool. But what do you guys think self-care is? Like, what's self-care for you? What do you tell your client? She's cracking up. What's self-care for you?
Well, I'm laughing because I don't want to completely shit on my graduate school teachers.
Yeah.
But I would be in class every week, and they would ask me at the end of class, what are you going to do for self-care? And when you get asked that over and over and over and over, you start coming up with some of the most ridiculous answers that I know damn well is not self-care. Okay? Like, I'm going to be honest. One of them was, I told my teacher, I said, I eat a couple pieces of chocolate every single night after dinner. I said, that's my self-care tonight. And she was like, okay. And it's like,
No.
what?
No.
First of all, ma'am, shouldn't you be saying that's not self-care? But that's why I was laughing, because I was thinking about eating chocolate.
No, that's pampering. That's indulging. That's many other words which are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that, with indulging, pampering, any of that stuff. I'm not saying that it doesn't feel good. I'm not saying that it doesn't do good. But when we say self-care, that's not what we mean, right? So when you tell your clients, I really want you to practice some self-care over the weekend, what are the things that you're referring to at any given moment?
Yeah, I think their basic needs are a great start, because the number of times I've had to look at people and say, well, are you drinking enough water?
Yes.
Are you sleeping enough? Sleep.
Yep.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's like one of my favorite activities.
Yeah.
So if my therapist was like, you need to sleep more, I'd be like, can you
Okay.
sign, like, doctor's note, please. Can you sign something?
There you go.
But the basic needs need to be met first.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I don't know what happened and where we kind of jumped over those and decided that those were no longer important. And getting my nails done or getting my hair done or getting a massage was more important than meeting those basic needs.
Or going with your girlfriend to the bar and having a drink. This is our self-care for tonight. To get away from the babies, to get away. That is not. That, again, that is pampering. That is fun. That is indulging, and there's nothing wrong with it. You should have those things in your life. Self-care is, I'm feeling depleted today because my 7 clients had incredibly difficult things that they sat and talked to me about. I'm feeling the heaviness of their world today. I am processing that because I don't want vicarious trauma to happen to me. So I am going to go home. I am going to go into my room. I am going to have quiet time. I am going to listen to a podcast that soothes me. I am going to eat nutritiously. I might indulge and have a little I don't know, treat or whatever. But it's like, I'm not going to go home and go save the world again. Like, everybody around me needs to take care of themselves tonight, because tonight is my quiet time. It is my me time. The main thing to know about self-care is, it's not your nails, it's not what you're buying, it's not your $200 pair of pants, it's not who you're hanging out with, it's not what your makeup you're wearing. It doesn't cost money. It is free. Self-care is free. You should be able to do self-care. When I lost my dad and my mom and all that, and going through all that, the grief counselor, I didn't even think about this, because you don't think to eat, to drink, because you're like so busy, dealing with the end of life stuff and I just, and the first thing that the grief counselor said was, make sure that she's drinking water. Always have water next to her on her bedside there. Make sure that, don't force her to eat, but make sure there's snacks, easy things, right? A banana, or something, a yogurt or something there for her to eat. Don't make her have to get up and ask her, because the energy level and whatever else. That's me self-caring. That's people letting me have self-care, just being in my bed and not thinking about anything, and it's free. It's free, and it's appropriate to what's going on with you, right? It's appropriate. Instead, what are we seeing online? Well, girl, you have to practice some self-care and just take yourself out and buy do this and do that with that person, or whatever. I'm going to watch, I don't know, I'm going to binge on TikTok, and like, all of that is not self-care, but that's what you're hearing and seeing online. And you see how that would be problematic when we're sitting around trying to tell people what real self-care is. Yeah, I think. So there's that. So, all right. So it used to be called psychobabble back in the day. I don't know if you guys are even old enough to remember that term. No, right? So when I was growing up, and nobody ever really bragged about going to therapy in those days, right? But, you know, they learn things, they read things. The whole inner child movement, I don't know if you guys know about that, but like you're inner child, you need to take care of your...
Oh, yeah.
All of that
I've
stuff
heard,
that came out.
yeah.
Well, people that read about it, people that did, I forget what that term is, the whole... there's a term, it'll come to me. But people that kind of got into that whole thing, right? All of a sudden, when they spoke to other people, those are the terms they would use. And I remember everyone just, shut the hell up, man. Don't come to me with that psychobabble. They would call it psychobabble because that's what it sounded like, psychobabble to them. We just call it therapy speak now, right? Because the words are a little bit more appropriate that are being used. They're just being kind of misused. And then weaponized. What do you think about that? Do you think that they're being weaponized?
Ooh, I think so. Sometimes just seeing like, just from your definition of things now, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, because not saying like someone said things to me, but I'm like, I've seen those words being thrown at, and then the person that's getting like having the words thrown at them, they're kind of like, whoa, wait, okay, wait a second, like I didn't mean to, and then they'll keep doing it, and it's like, oh, okay.
That's the intent. That's
Yeah.
what I was talking about earlier.
Right.
What's your intent in using that term? Why are you calling somebody a narcissist? You know, when that happened to me, and I was like, what are these people even talking about? They don't even know what that means.
Yeah, right.
But the intent was not to inform and to care about and to get it. The intent was to slander, to make you feel bad, to make you feel like you're, I don't know, like something's the matter with you. It's all very negative. It's all about it's all about, look at what I know about you, and here's how I figured you out, and and then they use that term to do that. And unless you're a professional, you're gonna feel some kind of way about it.
Yeah.
We laugh at you. Like, I laugh at you when I see that. I think it's ridiculous to be calling me that when you don't even know that what you're doing is sort of like what they do. Like, what you're doing is what narcissists do. But this is how they're defending themselves. This is how they're on the offensive. This is how they denigrate somebody else. They are using it for the intent that it's not intended for. That's really what I see with that. All right, let's talk a little bit about TikTok. Is the one that I'm not really on TikTok, but I hear that TikTok seems to be the favorite with the whole mental health speak thing. I don't know. What do you think?
Could be. I mean, I know TikTok is the most popular platform, so I don't have TikTok, but TikTok is so popular that I'll see TikTok videos on other platforms. So it's like, okay, all right. So, yeah.
The ones that I'm bothered with, because of course there's a lot of mental health professionals online that are using therapy speak to sort of try to do education, to do awareness, to get you, and that's fine, you know. And I still have some issue with some of them because I think sometimes they need to police themselves on how and what they're doing and saying. Just because you are a mental health clinician doesn't mean that the context in which you're trying to, I get what you're trying to do, but then you have to police yourself in it in some kind of ways. And like a great example is if I see a clinician doing really cool TikTok stuff, like if you're in a relationship and you're unable to communicate, and they're a relationship specialist, that's what they do. Those are they're couples therapists, and they're on their TikTok, and you see these 4 things happen, with the hands, this thing and that thing, and then you'll see they give you the cold shoulder, or whatever it is that they call you names and whatever, these 4 things, then you might have a narcissist on your hands, and we can fix that and whatever. That's in a 1-minute TikTok. So you just took an entire semester or 2 of graduate school, courses to understand what a narcissist is versus what a really bad husband is, and you put it in a TikTok for 3 seconds there with these 4 little definitions. Now you have everybody running around trying to see, my boyfriend does that, my cousin's brother does that, they're narcissists, and you're like imploding these relationships without the intention of doing that, because this TikTok thing was so important. It's out of context is what I'm saying. Like, that information is so out of context that it can apply to anybody if you're using it like that, and that's not what they're intended to do.
It's really unfortunate because I think the you know, the desire for people to grow on social media, you know, they're like, oh, the algorithm, and, you know, this is my ideal client. And so what are the, I don't know, there's like the hooks and shit like that for Instagram reels, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I sound like an old lady trying to communicate with this because I don't do that kind of stuff. I'm not really savvy in the social media world, but they're so focused on gaining more followers and promoting, you know, either their practice or whatever they're trying to do. Maybe they're trying to be like an influencer or whatever it is. They're trying to gain followers. And so they're paying more attention to what is it that will bring my audience in. And those are, unfortunately, those are the things that will. And again, they need to just police themselves.
Yeah, I feel like that too.
And keep it within your scope. I mean, you even said, even if they specialize in working with couples and they are a relationship counselor, it can still be detrimental.
It can be horrifying. And you know, and that takes me to why I said radio personalities and things like that. Because I've heard them here in South Carolina.
Yep.
I've heard them everywhere where they want to do a little half an hour evening show, morning show thing or whatever.
Right.
And they're talking to people who call in with their relationship problems.
Yep. Yeah, no, I got.
And you hear people calling in with these
got
things.
some stories.
like calling in with these like really important things that are going on with the person doing, and then you hear the advice that they're giving supposedly for entertainment purposes and supposedly with their disclaimers. But let me tell you something, all of the fucking people listening to your ass is going to believe that applies to them too. Okay, and it probably doesn't even apply to the person you're talking to. And why are you even telling somebody to leave their husband? If it was my husband, I wouldn't tolerate that. I would just leave and pack up. Yeah, okay. Well, you don't know if this guy is abusing this woman and going to find the woman that's going to be lethal to her for her to do. So stop giving her that. It might apply for your best friend and your sister.
Right.
You don't know this person's situation, so that's not appropriate to be saying. And they may not be telling you everything. They're not going to be telling you everything on the radio, you know, kind of thing. But it's very problematic to me that people think that because they are on the radio, on TV, on the podcast, on whatever, that they can just take calls and like screen random little snippets of somebody's relationship and then give them relationship advice based on that. And then all their opinions and then all of their history of their people, their relationships and what they did and they didn't do, and feel good about themselves doing that. And I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, we're not even allowed to do that, right?
You just took the thought out of my head. So you use the word advice, and I'm sitting here like, we don't even give people advice.
Nope.
Well, we're not supposed to. That's a whole nother.
That's a whole nother.
If there's therapists out there that are doing it, that's on them. But yes, I mean, you're correct. Like if there's people on the radio giving relationship advice, it's like, well, I work with couples and they'll look at me and they're like, what do you think we should do? And I'm like, what do you think you should do?
Yeah. Or here are the different options that people consider under different circumstances, but you need to understand only you can come because you guys live with each other. So you need to take what I say, go home, reflect, think about it, be real honest with yourself, and see what your role is in this too. Like how are you contributing to this without even knowing that you're contributing to this? What are some of the ways that we can sort of minimize this from happening? You don't have to throw the man out. I mean, unless there's abuse and violence, that's a whole nother thing, right? Like then we're like, get the hell out. Be safe and get out. And even with that, we're super careful because what's the statistics? I used to work at a domestic violence center, and all the training and everything under the sun, you know not to do that because it takes up to 7 times before a person leaves. And that 7th time that they leave, a domestic violence or abusive situation is the most lethal time in their life. So what that means is that's when they end up dead in the hospital, mutilated, you know, like just completely, that 7th time. So the luck of the ones that can get out the 7th time and be okay is very limited, and they have support and help and everything else under the sun. So to be telling somebody that's calling you up and saying, whatever, oh, just leave them. You don't know what kind of consequences you're talking about here, so it shouldn't be entertainment. That's just my big spiel.
What do we have to do to get radio personalities to just, you know, free advertising for the therapists that work with couples, you know? Instead of giving them advice, it's go see Kristen at her private practice.
I guess, because I mean, I've worked around, and these people. He
knows who I'm talking about.
I know about like 8 right offhand, and it's kind of like just from the radio side. Basically what they want to do. I think his relationship talk is very like it's like sketching because like people
Everybody
are in
has
relationships, right? So it's kind of like, okay, the CEO or the GM is like, okay, well, we need people to like want to listen. So a lot of times they'll screen these calls. It's like, okay, what's your problem?
issue?
Before they even talk to the personality, they have the producer like, okay, what's going on? Oh, really? Okay, cool. And they'll patch it in. This one's going to be good. This one's going to be good.
Juicy.
Yeah, exactly. And so when that happens, then when you hear that over the radio, and especially if it's posted on YouTube, say it's a big radio station and they post a clip on YouTube, then you're going to get the comments. So everyone's, chiming in. So it's kind of like, it's the tea. That's it. It's the gossip, the tea. People,
the tea.
they just want it. And
it's dangerous. It's dangerous. I also find it incredibly fucking irresponsible.
Yeah.
Because guess whose offices they end up in?
Exactly.
When shit happens,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And these are people's families and lives that you're talking about. You don't know children involved. You just don't know. So it's like to be so flippant about it, and be so haha about it.
Yeah.
I know because I've had whatever relation. No.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. Or somebody trying to come out and they call the radio station or they call whoever, I don't even care who it is, the podcast, and it's live and they're talking about, I want to come out, to my parents and I'm gay, but I don't know, and they're Christian and they're, but what can I do? Listen, if they love you, they should accept you for what you are. You just go ahead and go out. And if they don't, you don't give that kind of advice because you don't know what literally happens to people when they come out.
Exactly.
Just because you think it's the hip, cool thing to do and screw my family, well, you try living without your family and your church and your people and your house and be on the street and everything. You don't know. Stop giving this advice that is not.
Yeah.
It's inappropriate as far as I'm concerned. But I think the ones that use disclaimers and say things like, we are not professional, blah, blah, blah. Please, I have a little bit more of a...
But that's the thing, though. They don't even do that, though.
Yeah.
Like, most of the radio stations that I've known and, like, kind of interacted with, like, they don't do that. They don't... Like, the smart ones do. Smart ones that are like, hey, disclaimer before...
Sued.
Exactly. So, I would hope they would, but they don't do that.
Yeah, it scares me, especially now with the lingo thing, and like everybody's diagnosing everybody. Everybody knows. Do you see that a lot? Everybody has a disorder. Like, and who's diagnosing everybody? It's everybody online. Like everybody online is diagnosing everybody. And like, there is a big difference between having tendencies and having a disorder.
Yes.
There's a big difference between going through something and having a disorder. To get diagnosed requires a skilled person to diagnose you, and then we're still giving ourselves some space for what if we're wrong and what if, because it's a very complicated process to do. And I don't know. Anyway, so that's that. So the good thing about it is, because we're going to go back, the good thing about it and what is done with mental health is that it has mainstreamed mental health awareness, right? So it's made it like, everybody talks about it, so it's not something that, and it's good for us because then we feel like if you're relatively educated and you don't about it on the issues, or you're wondering and you're questioning, do I have an eating disorder? I don't know. Somebody said I might or whatever, and then you go check it out by a professional. Isn't that what I always say? Always call a professional, do a screening. You don't even have to stay in therapy. Just have your screening done like you would with a doctor. They will screen you. They will let you know what your risk factor is. They will let you know how likely that is. They will let you know if, no, you're just acting out or acting poorly, and we can change that kind of thing, right? So always do that. All right, so let's talk a little bit. What do we want to talk about next? Do you guys want to talk about the terms themselves and just see where we're at with that? Okay, so therapy speak phrases being used incorrectly, right? Or out of context, I like to say. One of the big ones is gaslighting. Gaslighting, everybody gaslights everybody when they don't agree with what the person doesn't agree that they agree with. Suddenly you're gaslight. Don't gaslight me. I know I'm weird. You're like, I know I didn't say that. Don't gaslight me. Or she's gaslighting you, girl. Leave it. Like, no, that's not what gaslighting means. Have you guys seen the movie where this term came from? I just had this conversation at home not too long ago.
No,
Okay.
but I'm dying to know because I'm like, where the
Where's
origin
the-
of? Yeah.
Okay, so everybody knows that my thing is black and white movies, right? Like
Oh.
I love black and white movies from the 40s, 50s, like those old time movies. There's a movie with Ingrid Bergman and I forget what the guy's name, Charles Boulay, maybe? I don't know. A married couple. The name of the movie is called Gaslight. And the whole premise of it is that he marries her, she has money, he wants her money, all of that stuff. She's madly in love with him, so she trusts him, They're in this house, and in that time period that they live, gaslight in the house is how they lit. They didn't have electricity, so they had the little lamps that gas lit up to get lights, right? So he spent most of his time trying to convince her that what she's seeing isn't real, that what she's hearing isn't real, that what she thinks is reality isn't reality, that what she thinks happened didn't happen. This is how he's doing it because he's trying to get her committed so that all of her money can go to him, right? But he's being very loving, very deceiving about it. So it's not like he's just lying to me. He's just lying to me and then that's the end of the story. He's lying to you with a purpose. And the purpose is for you to question your own sense of reality because there's a gain that they get out of that. So that's an abusive tactic. That's why it's used. So this movie is about that happening. And so every time he would go up into the attic looking for this thing that he was looking for that had something to do with whatever his goal was, it would, for some reason, as he would creep and crawl up there and she would hear him, it would make the lights, the lamps that were lit by the gas kind of dim. Go dim and not dim. So she would notice that. But then she would mention it to him and he would be like, no, honey, that's not what's going on. What sounds in the attic? You're not hearing anything in the attic. But it's him creeping around up there and leaving the house and coming in through the house from up there. But he was not aware, I think, if I'm remembering the movie correctly, he wasn't aware that the lights would dim every time he would do that. So that's where the whole gaslighting
Wow. Okay.
sort of idea came from. So he was gaslighting her, and it comes from the fact that was going on in the movie while he was trying. But really what it is a very purposeful lying, distorting reality to get you to question your ability to understand your own reality. So now I'm questioning what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking, what I'm believing, what I'm feeling, what's real, what's not real. Am I real? Now that's the whole point of gaslighting. It is not, I don't want you to find out I bought shoes and I wasn't supposed to, so I lied.
Yeah.
Because you lie and then you leave it at that.
Right.
Now I'm lying and I'm trying to convince you I didn't spend the money and I just it turns into a whole nother thing. So what are they doing online with the term? It's almost like they're using it the same way they would use somebody's just lying to you. He's a liar. They're using it in that way. And instead of saying that, they're saying, girl, you're being gaslit, or you're gaslighting, or they're using that term inappropriately. So now everybody sort of thinks that when someone's lying to you, you suspect them of lying, that you're being gaslit.
Yeah.
Watch that movie; it's really good.
No, yeah, I'm wow.
Yeah,
I did not
Put me-
know. I
yeah.
did not know that that's where that term came
it's really
from.
good. And I watched that movie when I was much younger, so I'm probably not remembering a lot of the details. But I love Ingrid Bergman, so anything with her. And I've watched it at different ages, and every time I watch it, I find and think
Like a
something.
different
And now,
perspective.
as a professional, when I watch it, I'm
Right.
like, oh my god, people really do this stuff in real life. So
Yeah.
now my whole, and the only way that she was able to find out that she was being gaslit is because she was trying. I think there was like a detective involved with something, and he just was on the husband's side because he just couldn't. He was trying to help her. He was a good guy, but he was just I don't see that, and he just didn't see her. But then he started recognizing certain things, and it's because of him that he figured out that she was being gaslit, and they set the guy up and they found him. So that's that. All right.
Wow.
So let's talk about narcissism.
Ooh.
Favorite? What do you think?
That's your favorite?
That's my favorite to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not really my favorite. I shouldn't say that. It's just the one that I feel is the one people like to weaponize the most. And it's sad. It's really sad because if you ever know someone who has been, I have clients who are currently in relationships, long-term relationships with people who have narcissistic personality disorder and or very severe traits of narcissism, right? They are narcissists. And these people are just trying to survive because it's so much bigger than just somebody being. It's people have this idea that narcissism means, oh, they're so self-involved and they love themselves and they're just thinking about themselves and they're behaving in these certain ways. They're just such narcissists. That's not it. Narcissistic personality disorders is a personality disorder. There's a few of them in there. I don't do personality disorders. Do you do personality? They're one of the ones that most, I hate to say this because it's shameful, but most mental health clinicians do not want to treat personality disorders. And there's several of them. There's narcissistic personality disorder. There's borderline personality disorder. There's histrionic personality. There's a bunch of different ones. One of the reasons that they hesitate from before with this is because they're incredibly difficult to treat. And most people, in order to be treated, like, except for the borderline personality disorder, the rest of them have no real self-awareness. They have no sense of, I'm doing something wrong. They have no sense of what it feels like for someone else. They could care less about it. It's all about you being their source of whatever, whatever. And they also, and it's a little bit of an abusive thing, but a lot of times they actually do love the person, but their behaviors are disordered. They're disordered. And the depth to which the narcissism goes on is very detrimental to that person's life, to the partner's life. So a lot of us, unless you're someone who specializes in personality disorder, like, Dr. Ramani or one of the online people who have, this is what they focus on, this is what they're good at, this is what they don't mind treat, and they usually treat the victims of the people that have it. But there are some people who do really good jobs with people with personality disorders. I'm not one of them.
Well, and it's challenging because, you brought up a good point. A lot of these people with these diagnoses, they don't, it's like that phrase, like you can't help someone that doesn't want to change.
Yeah. And that doesn't see that there's anything to change. They don't have self-awareness.
Yep. They don't see that anything's wrong. And I think, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't typically have people that reach out to me for therapy for personality disorders. Now, maybe part of it is because my website is all about trauma and first responders and military and EMDR.
Yeah.
But I don't think people typically reach out for therapy for that. They reach out for something else, and then the therapist is like, you have a personality disorder.
They figure that out.
Have you ever been diagnosed with this before? And I have had that where
I've had that too.
I've started working with someone and I'm like, you have a borderline personality disorder diagnosis.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And even with them, it's a little easier because they are the ones that are self-aware, want to change, don't want to hurt people. It happens when they're in an episode. It happens when they're dysregulated. And hopefully they'll move that away from personality disorders anyway, because I think it should be like emotional dysregulation, something or the other over there, as opposed to that. So the personality thing is, they're very hard to treat because they have to be aware and they have to be willing and they have to want to change. Mostly they don't. And they tend to weaponize, I shouldn't say this because it's generalizing, but in my experience, what's happened is, if a couple comes in because the wife is saying, we have to go to therapy, we have to go to couples therapy, and you discover that what's really going on there is the partner decided, yes, we're going to come in, that's a person that has something like narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder. They're weaponizing therapy, and you don't even know it. And you're making the situation worse as a therapist because you're trying to give credit to the person with the disorder because you don't see that they're really not interested or invested in change. They're trying to learn the most that they can learn so that they can go back home and sort of use it in a way that's going to help them do what they're going to do better most of the time. That doesn't apply to everybody. So you're doing unless you know how to treat that and how to be aware of it, and most therapists don't. So people who do couples counseling, they typically don't know how to even treat or anything narcissistic personality disorder, and then they get couples in there, and then the next thing you know, it's like things are imploding. The woman or the man that's coming in and has the partner who's got this, it's getting worse, it's getting hostile, it's getting whatever. It's because that person, when they come in, they're learning how to weaponize everything that's going on in their relationship to not change it. So it's very complicated. That's why you have to be very skilled. And people who do want to come in that have the disorder, and there are people that can help you, I think that that's fantastic. But I think if you don't know what the hell you're doing, you should stay away from them because you don't know who you're hurting by trying to. You can't do regular couples therapy in a couple when one person has a personality disorder.
you will be causing more, right?
Yep.
You will be causing more damage than good. But so to throw that term around liberally because you don't like somebody, you don't like how they're behaving, or you don't agree with whatever they're doing, you're being irresponsible and reckless. Because you don't even know what the hell you're talking about, first of all. But even if you did, you shouldn't be using that term if you're not a professional person dealing with, like, it's hostile, it's ugly, and it misinforms, and you're using it, your intention is real clear why you're using that. So that's my issue with that word.
I think that we should just go back to old school terminology, and if someone's being an asshole, just call them an asshole.
Thank you.
You know?
Have I not said that a million times on this show?
Yeah. No, I'm just
Thank you. Your husband's an idiot, or he's fucking, or your wife is just not cool at all. She's bad. She's just behaving badly. Like, really, like that's. I agree.
Do I sound more professional or put together if I'm like, he's a narcissist?
Yeah.
Or if I'm like, he's an asshole?
Yeah,
you
he's
know?
an asshole.
I'm just going to call someone an asshole if that's what they're being.
If that's what they're being an asshole.
You know?
And exactly.
I need to remind them sometimes.
I am with you 100%, girl.
Wow.
Okay, so boundaries we talked about. Trauma. I'm going to hand this over to Kristen because that's her jam.
Well, I was actually very happy to hear, I can't remember what phrase you said earlier on tonight, but it was correct. And I was like, whew, dodged a bullet there. You said something like, if someone has a trauma from an experience or something like that. And that's
the re-injuring, the re-traumatizing.
I can't remember how you phrased it, but I think where trauma is a word that gets thrown around a lot right now. And I think people are just very, very confused about it.
Yeah.
So I think what I was trying to get at is it's not like, oh, that's a traumatic experience necessarily, but trauma is like an emotional response to a shitty situation or a scary situation or whatever. So the trauma is our response to it. And I think it's super important. I see it a lot since I work with a lot of first responders. So, if I was a police officer and I saw and heard and smelled and dealt with a lot of things that most people don't ever experience. And so for someone, that would be an experience where they would end up with a trauma response because of, either seeing a dead body or whatever it is. And I didn't. So trauma is different for everybody. Right. And so, I work with a lot of police officers, and I'm like, just because you've, let's say you've gone to 10 calls where there was someone that was deceased, it doesn't mean that on the 11th one, you won't have a trauma response. So you're not, as much as they might think that they can.
I've seen that in my own family. It's really incredible. And it doesn't matter what word you use. You know what you're looking at. You know what you're seeing. And and it's like that conversation we have between the whole argument in our field that I was talking to Jerry Arcarell before about PTSD. That's another one that's thrown around all over the place. PTSD and PTS, right? And people have a whole big division about what those things are. And as somebody that deals with PTSD and somebody who's had PTS and somebody who, as a veteran and as everything, I understand how terminology can be kind of tossed around and used because it's a common language, right? And it helps you sort of have a narrative about it that everybody can understand what you're kind of talking about. But it's a whole other thing to say somebody has PTSD when they maybe don't have PTSD and maybe what they're dealing with is some PTS stuff, right? Like, it makes sense that you have some post-traumatic stress going on in your world right now. Does that mean that we automatically diagnose them with the disorder part? That's what you're talking about. So, like, if you have 10 calls as a police officer, and of course you're going to have you're not a robot, right? So of course you're going to have some processing to do about that. Of course you're going to be shook about that. Of course, you're going to have feelings deep that most people don't have. That doesn't mean you have the disorder. The disorder has crept into, that could happen, like you said, on the 11th one. It can happen on the first one for some people. But once you have the disorder, it's a completely different animal that you're dealing with. Like, there are a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of things that aren't. So I feel like when they toss this word around, anybody who's had something going, oh man, he's just traumatized. What are you saying? What are you saying? He's traumatized. He's having a hard day. He's having nightmares. He's upset. That's all normal. That's all normal. If he didn't, I'd be concerned. I'd be concerned if somebody got attacked and they're walking around, like, hey man, I'm just fine, I'm cool. Okay, we'll wait and see when somebody talks to you sideways and how you respond to that. Then we'll see where the trauma. You'd probably see that a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, it's important to note that a lot of these situations might, like you said, it's normal to have these reactions to certain situations. It's normal to think about things. And I'm obviously coming at it from a lens primarily working with first responders. I tell them, I'm like, the things that you see are so fucked up.
Yeah.
And I know because I saw them too. Yeah. But that is not, most people don't see that. And so you thinking about it after, that's normal. You maybe dreaming about it, having a nightmare, or thinking about it, wanting to be closed off, not wanting to go home and tell your spouse that's completely normal. So it really very much is like, what response do you have?
Yeah, what response do you have? And that also, it doesn't need to be a forever response. It can be something that can be processed 6 months, 3, whatever, however it is that's going to work for people. For other people, it might go into the disorder that is going to require a whole different kind of treatment. Or they might be, like I was, with PTS for like 10 years after 9/11, not understanding that that's what I had, because I didn't have the disorder part, so I didn't dare say, oh no, 9/11, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't have the wherewithal. I didn't have the knowledge until I started hanging out and doing work with veterans who did have PTSD, whose families were dealing with them that had PTSD and all. And then it occurred to me, oh my God, for 10 years and I had to process it and work it. But I never got diagnosed with a disorder because I didn't have all the criteria for that. But did I have the stressor part of it? Yes, I did, And does it show up sometimes? Of course it does. So let's move on. So the next one is attachment styles. I don't know if you know a lot about that, but you do couples, so you probably do. So that's a big one now. Attachment styles, J-Rock, is we all, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know a lot about it. My understanding is from our family of origin, from our childhood, from our whatever, we learn and develop certain attachment styles. One is the secure attachment. The other one is the avoidant attachment. Then one is the anxious attachment, and I forget what the other one is. I don't remember. But there are all these different attachment styles. And when you get together, when you grow up with somebody who has a certain kind of attachment style and you have a certain kind of attachment styles, the problems that come out in that relationship almost always have to do with your attachment style. So if I'm a secure attached person, right, and I get into a relationship, I'm very independent, I can do this, I can do that, and it's not going to bother me, I'm secure, I'm whatever, you go, you do.
Right.
That works for me. My partner is an avoidant attachment person. So like something gets too heavy, gets too whatever, they avoid it, they go away, they whatever, and I'm trying to talk and I'm trying to have conversations and I'm trying to feel it. They don't do that. They shut down, they avoid, they go away, their emotions go away. You think they don't love you, then you start, like it creates all of this turmoil because you're not understanding that it has more to do with their attachment style and nothing to do with how they love you and want to be with you in your marriage, but it feels like it is, and that's why you think you're having the problems. Did I kind of sum that up?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of language and work around that now because people are talking about it. But now you hear people online using that anytime somebody breaks up, like poor J-Lo and Bennifer, like everybody's throwing out attachment shit with them. And, so we just have to be careful, right? And what we're doing, because a lot of times we just don't know enough to be saying that. OCD is the one that used to bother Victoria a lot. People use OCD for everything now. Oh my God, my OCD is coming out. I have to park like it's. That is not OCD. You have no idea what OCD is, but everybody is throwing that around. And what I was saying earlier is that may not be problematic for you and your people and your whatever, but it takes away from the validity of someone who's literally suffering every day, trying to work, trying to even survive with their OCD tendencies, listening to everybody else diagnose and self-diagnose everybody else with OCD when all they're really doing is straightening out all of their like I do with my wall over there, I straighten everything out all the time. I don't have OCD, but I do have, that little bit of that I have to do. It's problematic because then the people who really do have OCD are not going to feel like they're taken seriously. That there's something even more worse,
right?
Or that it's being dismissed or it's being, So there's that. And then we talked about self-care, right? Okay, and that's it. All right, so what are we going to do about this, guys? What do we do? How do we navigate this?
Ooh, man. So now I know like the legit definitions. So I'm just gonna, just kind of like lean towards y'all with this one because I have friends who've used these terms, friends, family, colleagues.
Yeah.
So I'm just in my mind. I'm like, oh, like now I know. Yeah. So it's kind of like, all right, how to like correct them in a way. It's like, ooh, nah, you might not want to.
I think the thing to keep in mind, this is how because I know we can't control it. We can't control it. We can educate. We can whatever. We can't control it. But I think the thing to keep in mind is when people are using the terms, I don't tend to necessarily, I do correct, like if my household uses terms, use these exaggerated words to describe some person working with them. I'm like, no, they're just irritable, or no, you're not having a crisis. You're just having a bad day. Like I try to just bring it back very calmly, very nicely, and they use different language. I think I just choose to use appropriate language as opposed to not, depending, right? I don't want to correct people. That's not my job. I'm not going to police people. I'm not going to do any of that. But I do think that when it's the one thing I do step up to very much so is if it's being used with the intention to harm another person, then I have a fucking problem with you. Now I have a problem with you because now it's not that you're unintentionally harming somebody by saying, oh, the ADHD behavior. Okay, right. It's offensive, it's hurtful, it's whatever. But you're not doing it because you want to harm this person. You just seriously think that that's what ADHD is, so we'll work with that. But when you're using it against somebody to make them feel stupid, incapable of whatever, like just making them feel some kind of way, then I step up. I do. I make a big thing. I make a big to-do about that, and I try to correct that shit.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what my personal commitment to it is, and then bitch and complain about it on my podcast.
There you go.
That's all I can do, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I was going to say I need to be better about, I guess, correcting people. I like what you said about I'm not going to police people, but if it is directly meant to harm someone or you're talking shit about someone, right? I like that, having that be the rule of that's when I'll step in and kind of correct them in a gentle way. I think I get, I'm guilty of, thinking I'm not at work, so I'm not going to go into therapist mode. Yeah. And that feels a lot like that. If I start, I already have to remind friends and neighbors of, oh, this is feeling a lot like a therapy session and I'm not working right now.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Boundaries. Those are real boundaries.
I know. They're trying to get the freebie. That's it.
I know. A lot of people are trying to get handouts over here. I'm like, y'all, I know I'm good, but I'm not giving out any
What does
free
this
sessions.
mean?
But I just, setting some kind of guideline for if it really is someone's trying to harm someone by saying that, then
that's fine. Online, if I see it online, if I see it in my own family, I correct it. Even if I have to be ugly about it, I'll do it. Or if I have to be nice about it, I'll do it. Or if I'm just gentle about it, I'll do it. It really all depends. But the thing is what your intent is. If what your intent is to justify your ugly ass bad behavior at the expense of me or somebody I love, I'm coming after you. I am going to use the power of my license to do that. But if you're just using it because everybody else is using it and you don't even know that's different. That's you handle that a little bit differently, and you wanna help people use it in a way that's right and correct and make them feel good about it. And that's really it. And again, we appreciate, right, that this is even a conversation that we can have, and we're bitching and complaining about it and everything. But we do appreciate that it actually is. People are more aware of it.
Yeah.
You know that they're aware. More people are going to therapy. More people are going to counseling or wanting to do it, or at least recognizing behaviors, recognizing things. It's just a matter of getting all of that right. All of it in this rightful place, in the process. But we do appreciate it, and we want people educating themselves on it. We want people using the terms in the way that if they resonate with it and it means something to them, we want that.
Yeah.
We just don't want people misusing it in a way that's detrimental to other people. That's all, right?
Right.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
It's
and
always
everybody,
educational.
I'm
Oh,
so
man.
glad Kristen, that you came. See, there was
Yeah.
it was easy peasy, wasn't it?
Right, it was, and I learned things.
Did you learn things?
so-
Yeah, me too. I always learn something. Yeah. So, guys, we will see you next week. Hopefully, Lisa will be here then too, and then we can have a livelier conversation. We don't know what the topic is going to be, but it will definitely be something mental health. So, as we always say, good night, and what? Take care of your mental health.
That's right.
Go do some self-care.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the X Podcast with me, Xiomara Sosa, clinical mental health counselor, licensed professional counselor here in South Carolina. We hope you enjoy our real conversations about all things related to mental health. You can check out our show notes for reference, resources, and other show-related information. If you found value in our conversation, we encourage you to join us weekly as we discuss different mental health topics. You can head over to the X Podcast website at www.studiotalkpodcast.net and send us a message from there, as well as sign up for our newsletter. Our email address is studiotalkmentalhealth@gmail.com. You can also subscribe to our podcast and leave us a rating and review at blueberry.com/studiotalkmentalhealth. And send us a text or call us at area code 843-695-9974. Please recommend our podcast to your friends, colleagues, family, and networks. Thanks for supporting us.